Before humans understood the power of the Ogowe River, it already existed as an ancient, conscious being. Its waters carried the memory of earth, sky, and the earliest times. Every current followed an unseen order, and all nature moved to its rhythm. One night of sacred storm, the sky darkened, and the wind suddenly stopped. Lightning tore through the darkness and struck the heart of the river. The water glowed, swirled, then slowly calmed. From this meeting of celestial fire and ancestral water, Ngondé was born. She emerged from the depths, half woman, half spirit. Her body shimmered with blue and silver reflections, shaped by the river itself. Her eyes held the wisdom of past seasons and the promise of those yet to come. At her birth, the river recognized its guardian. Silently, Ngondé returned to the depths. From that moment on, she became the river's consciousness, watching over the balance between nature and the humans yet to come.
After her birth, Ngondé moved through the depths of the Ogowe River. She glided through the currents like a luminous shadow, learning every corner of her domain. The waters responded to her presence, becoming calm or powerful according to her silent will. Fish shifted direction as she passed. Aquatic plants gently bowed, and the roots of tall trees reached into the water as if greeting her. The river was no longer just a waterway, but a living territory ordered by an unseen force. Ngondé understood that the river was both her body and her voice. Every movement she made echoed at the surface. Every disturbance in the water carried a message to her. Thus, the invisible kingdom of the river was born, protected by a guardian unseen but deeply felt.
In time, the first villages appeared along the banks of the Ogowe. People observed the river with respect and restraint. They took water and fish without excess, aware that their survival depended on the fragile balance between nature and their actions. Ngondé watched from the depths. She sensed the silent gratitude of the inhabitants through the clarity of the water and the steady rhythm of the currents. When seasons grew uncertain, the river remained generous. Floods softened before becoming destructive, and the land stayed fertile. Thus, an age of harmony was born. The river sustained humans, and humans protected the river. Without knowing it, they lived under Ngondé's protection, whose unseen presence preserved natural order and peace along the banks. Seasons passed, and with them, the memory of the elders began to fade. Acts of respect became mechanical, then rare. The river, once seen as a living being, was gradually viewed as a resource to be exploited. Trees were cut too close to the banks, disturbing the balance of the soil. Waters that were once clear began to lose their purity. People no longer looked at the river as an ally, but as a silent possession. Ngondé felt this change. From the depths, she watched without intervening. The river continued to flow, but its breath grew heavier. Harmony still existed, fragile, suspended by the thread of forgetfulness. From the darkened depths of the river, Ngondé watched the human world. The waters carried every wound, every disturbance, every imbalance caused by forgetfulness. What she felt was not sudden anger, but a slow, deep sadness. The river appeared calm at the surface, but beneath, the currents grew heavier. Plants lost their glow, fish became scarce. Ngondé understood that harmony could not survive forever without memory and respect. Her ancient gaze rested upon the transformed riverbanks. She did not act yet. She watched, patient, knowing that every human choice eventually calls for a response from the river. On a windless night, the Ogowe River changed its rhythm. The water rose slowly, without noise or visible violence.
The banks were touched one by one, as if the river were gently reclaiming what had always belonged to it. Huts closest to the water were surrounded, then submerged. Fields disappeared beneath the dark surface. This was neither an attack nor a brutal punishment, but a silent reminder of the river's forgotten power. Nature was restoring what had been neglected. In the depths, Ngondé guided the movement. She directed the currents, preventing total chaos. The river overflowed, yet still showed restraint, offering a chance to those willing to understand its message. At the heart of the overflow, as water slowly covered the banks, one life was spared. A child, carried by the current, did not sink. His body floated at the surface, guided by an unseen force that kept him safe. The river seemed to change direction around him. Whirlpools moved aside, currents softened in his path. Where water swallowed everything else, it became gentle for him, as if guided by a higher will. In the depths, Ngondé watched over him. Without revealing herself, she guided the child to a spared shore. Through this silent act, she chose a witness, a living link between the river and the human world. As the waters slowly withdrew, the child remained still on the damp riverbank. The river had calmed around him, as if holding its breath. An unseen mark had been placed upon his destiny. In the depths, Ngondé approached without disturbing the water. She extended her will toward the child, binding his spirit to the river. This bond was neither an easy blessing nor a light burden. It made him a potential guardian, bearer of the memory humans had begun to forget. From that moment on, the child would never be completely separated from the river. Even far from its banks, he would feel its silent call, a constant reminder of the ancient force that had spared him. After the waters withdrew, the Ogooué River returned to a peaceful appearance. Its surface was smooth, almost motionless, as if nothing had happened. Yet this calm carried a new weight, filled with memory and anticipation. Villages slowly rebuilt themselves. People resumed their activities, but with restraint mixed with fear. The river watched in silence, while Ngondé remained in the depths, attentive to every change and emerging imbalance. The child grew during these quiet years. Without knowing why, he felt a constant pull toward the water. The river's silence was not forgetfulness, but a prolonged vigil, signaling that the story was far from over. With time, fear of the river faded once more. Men from distant lands arrived, drawn by the hidden riches of the land and water. The river was no longer seen as a living force, but as a route to exploit. Ancient trees fell beneath blades, opening the banks to new wounds. The water grew cloudy, heavy with mud and foreign residues. The river now carried visible marks of renewed greed. In the depths, Ngondé felt every wound as a slow pain. The apparent calm concealed a growing tension. Once again, the river stood at the boundary between patience and awakening. Deep within the river, something shifted. Currents slowed, then tightened, as if the water were gathering its strength. Ngondé, emerging from a long vigil, fully awakened her awareness. The river was no longer asleep. The wounds inflicted upon water and land echoed within her. Every fallen tree, every foreign substance poured into the current passed through her spirit like a lingering wave. This awakening was not sudden, but deep, filled with ancient resolve. At the surface, no one noticed the change, yet the river felt heavier, more present. Ngondé was awake, ready to remind the world that the Ogooué was not a possession, but a living force. After her awakening, Ngondé began whispering in the dreams of humans. At night, visions appeared to villagers: clear waters, luminous fish, ancient trees, and the deep roots of the river. Some saw spectral floods or whirlpools in which the spirit of the river reflected itself.
These dreams were neither threats nor punishments, but messages. The river sought to remind humans of what they had forgotten, their vital connection to water and land. Those who awoke from these visions felt a mixture of awe and fear. Ngondé, invisible, guided their souls toward ancestral memory. Each night, the visions grew clearer. People gradually understood that their destiny and that of the river were intertwined, and that the river's silence was not inaction, but a secret dialogue, accessible only to those who listened carefully. The child spared by the river had grown. He was no longer the one who floated through raging waters, but a young man whose gaze always seemed to search for the water. Even far from the banks, he felt the call of the current, the invisible vibration of the depths. Ngondé watched him closely. She saw in him a budding curiosity and respect, but also human fragility. The river's man would be someone capable of understanding, listening, and perhaps restoring what had been lost. Every step he took on land carried the weight of this silent bond. Around him, the river seemed to subtly come alive. Fish approached, plants leaned closer. Even without fully understanding what he felt, he knew his destiny was irrevocably tied to the Ogowe. The river's man began to sense Ngondé's presence in every ripple and reflection of the water. Streams, marshes, and distant currents spoke to him with an invisible voice, yet one clear to his attentive heart. He realized that the river was not just a resource, it was alive, conscious, and patient. Every human action could calm it or disturb it. This silent recognition gradually transformed him, awakening a deep instinctive respect for the balance of nature. Ngondé watched, satisfied with this emerging bond. The young man was becoming a witness and guardian of the river's secrets, able to perceive its warnings and whispers even where others saw only ordinary water. The river entered a period of tense waiting. Despite silent warnings, the damage continued, slower but deeper. The waters carried an unseen weariness, as if each current hesitated to continue its course. Ngondé then focused her will. She sought neither destruction nor anger, but a final possible balance. The time granted to humans was nearing its end. The river had to be understood, or it would turn inward, enforcing its ancient law. The river's man felt this shift intensely. An unusual heaviness weighed on the air, the water, and the land. He understood that this moment was not ordinary. The river was offering one last chance, a choice between harmony and irreversible rupture. The time of waiting gave way to the time of decision. Along the banks of the Ogowe, human actions grew heavier with meaning. Every spared tree, every piece of waste removed from the water now carried new value, as if the river were watching each act with heightened attention. Some instinctively understood the fragility of balance. Ancient knowledge, long ignored, resurfaced through practices of respect and restraint. Others, blinded by habit, continued their exploitation, unaware of the threshold they were crossing. Ngondé watched without intervening. The river no longer imposed signs, leaving humans responsible for their choice. In this tense silence, the future of the Ogowe slowly took shape, molded by human decisions. The river entered a state of deep tension. Currents, usually steady, seemed to slow and then surge without visible cause. This contained agitation revealed a force ready to be released, yet still restrained. Ngondé held back this power. She sensed the efforts of some humans to restore balance, but also the persistence of wounds inflicted upon the water. The river's anger was not blind. It weighed every intention and every action before manifesting. At the surface, the air grew heavy, charged with unseen electricity. The river had not struck yet, but its patience was nearing a critical threshold. The Ogowe waited, aware that its response would shape history for a long time. The threshold was crossed. The river, long restrained, released its power. Waters rose with solemn slowness, flooding the banks like an ancient breath reclaiming its rights. This surge was neither chaotic nor blind. It followed precise paths, sparing some places while submerging others. Where respect had existed, the water passed without destruction. Where greed persisted, it reclaimed what had been taken. Ngondé guided this force with restraint. The river was not punishing, but restoring balance. The surge carried the ancient memory of the Ogowe, inscribing into the land a lesson humans could no longer ignore. When the waters withdrew, the landscape had changed. The banks bore the marks of the river's passage, cleansed lands, displaced debris, but also areas surprisingly untouched. The silence that followed was deep, almost sacred. Humans observed the consequences of their choices. Some places had been spared, protected by ancient gestures of respect. Others, marked by abuse, had been reshaped by the water's force. The river had spoken without words. Ngondé returned to the depths, leaving behind a fragile yet possible balance. The river resumed its course, but its presence remained more perceptible, like a consciousness now revealed. The Ogowe River continued its course, calmer but filled with renewed memory. Its waters no longer sought to warn through force, for the lesson had been inscribed in the land and in human minds. Balance was not perfect, but it was now possible. The river's man became the quiet bearer of this heritage. Through his actions, choices, and silent respect, the bond between humans and water took on a new form. The river demanded no worship, only constant and humble attention. In the depths, Ngondé still watched. Invisible yet present, she embodied the river's memory, ready to remind, if needed, that water is never merely a thing. Thus, the story of the Ogowe continued, passed on like an ancient breath, as long as humans knew how to listen.